So Keith, we're doing something new here. Mm-hmm. We're talking about new movies. Very quickly, very rapidly. We haven't done this before. We're figuring it out.
Yeah. Hot takes.
Hot, super hot.
Two random guys sharing opinions that no one else for. It's Keith and Ed.
All right, Keith. The two movies we're talking about are movies that were recently released on streaming services in the middle of this wonderful period that that we're all this hell on earth that we're all living through. These films are Palm Springs and An American Pickle. Palm Springs you can find on Hulu. An American Pickle you can find on HBO Max.
Yes.
Keith, let's talk about Palm Springs first.
Guess you followed me. It's one of those infinite time loop situations you might have heard about.
That I might have heard about.
Yeah.
I went into it really wanting to like it. I like Andy Samberg and I like Christina Milioti. Do you know the female lead's name? It's something like that. I'm butchering it.
Yeah.
So no, you don't. But I like her. She was the mother in How I Met Your Mother. I think she's very talented. So I was excited to see their chemistry. I was excited to see the film.
Not talented enough to memorize her name, I see. Sorry, please continue.
You know I only judge people by their looks. No, she is very talented. I do like her work specifically. And it seems like the type of movie I would generally like. Here's my big takeaway from the film in a minute or less. What I dislike about the film is how little to do the film had with being stuck in a time loop. It seemed like they were very conscious of Groundhog Day, which I think is a good thing. They're very conscious of it, and they said, okay, we're gonna actively state that the answer to this problem is not an emotional journey. It's not, oh, I've learned my lesson, and now because I've learned my lesson, I can now get out of the time loop. And they make that very clear early on in the film. And I say, okay, we're gonna do that to not be Groundhog Day, but we're gonna root it in science. We're gonna say science is the answer. It's a physical time loop, and we're gonna have to do some. I'm gonna have to learn one of these characters. Spoilers alert at this point. We're gonna have to learn to quantum physics and how to really get out of a time loop, and we're gonna take all the time that we have to do that. And by rooting the film in science and not any sort of emotion to steer away from the Bill Murray vehicle, then there becomes no reason for them to be stuck in a time loop. You could have the same film. You could have the same exact film with these two people meeting at a wedding in a remote location, in a remote island somewhere that's just difficult to get off and on, and that they fall in love over the weekend, and they still have those same exact problems, and one person wants to leave the island and the other person doesn't. You'd have the same film. It's just people stuck in this place. And instead of them just being stuck on an island at a wedding, they're stuck in that moment in time. And then they sort of blur the lines of like, well, what time really is it now with dinosaurs and shit like that. So my biggest problem with the film is I don't think you need the film's hook at all. It's not rooted within the story because they deal with it within science and really no emotional stakes to it whatsoever in terms of the hook of the film. Those emotional stakes within the characters. Yes, but without that, it didn't need what it had. It just felt like, oh, we're going to give you this because it's different for the sake of being different, and it had no reflection on the actual narrative of the story, was my biggest problem with it. Other than that, I liked it.
The second you fall asleep, it all just goes back to the start.
I drove all the way back home to Austin, and I still woke up here.
One time I smoked a bunch of crystal and made it all the way to Equatorial Guinea. It was a huge waste of time.
My girlfriend and I watched the film a couple nights ago. Really, really liked it. It wasn't particularly challenging. It wasn't something that I'm going to think about for a long time afterwards. But it was just enjoyable. It was fun. I laughed out loud quite a few times. Had a good chuckle. Yeah. And it was fine. You know, you go to bed. Have a couple drinks, watch a movie, you go to bed. It was nice. I enjoyed it. Yeah, there's things I would have personally preferred or done differently or what have you. I think that the concept of being stuck in a time loop is so awesome, and it allows for infinite possibilities. And I do think that the film could have done more. I mean, it was really quick, which I guess I appreciate. It was like 90 minutes, didn't overstay its welcome. Really, it did drag a little bit towards the second half or the third act or what have you. But I think there was an opportunity for another couple of scenes. There was nothing like really memorable about their experiences together in the time loop. There was some cute moments, moments that make you go, oh yeah, that's funny. Like when they pretend there's a bomb in the cake and she shows up with an eye patch. Like that was really funny. Or when they did their little dance routine in the dive bar and run away throwing down bottles and stuff. Like that was really funny. But there was not that every comedy movie needs to have some over the top set piece or something. But you can really allow your imagination to run anywhere in this situation. And I just think like, I was talking to my girlfriend about like, wow, it's a really interesting thought to think like, if you were trapped in that situation for like 10 years, normal time, like you would go mad and you would try everything. This was prior to the little montage where it showed how the people Andy Samberg tried to sleep with or did sleep with. It was like, I would try to have sex with every single person at that wedding, male or female. At a certain point, I'm just trying to see what happens. I said at some point I might start killing people, and my girlfriend was like, "What?" I was like, "You don't know, like
you don't know, yeah."
So not that I needed like a murder subplot, but I just thought that like, wouldn't they have sex on the cake at the wedding at some point, or wouldn't they just I would just be like streaking around, or there's just so many things that you could have done in the movie to just be like, oh my God, I can't, like really memorable, funny things. So I felt like there wasn't a lot of that. It played it kind of safe in a lot of ways, which is fine.
What's the turning point for Andy Samberg to be like, okay, now I'm gonna come with you? Like, 'cause they're separate. He comes back.
Well, he goes to see J.K. Simmons, right?
And but what is it? What makes him want to get out of the time loop? I don't even remember.
Well, it's that seeing J.K. Simmons with his family, and J.K. Simmons is talking about how important family is, and his beautiful wife in the prime of her womanhood, and my kids are making fucking art out of pasta shells or whatever. But like, I just think that moment, he's like, oh yeah, I want that. I'm not afraid of the future. I felt like to that point, one, J.K. Simmons, amazing, does a great job in this movie. He's probably the best part. But Andy Samberg, I really thought that was an interesting concept to bring up. That like, oh my God, this guy wants to stay in this loop because he's scared of reality and he's carved out this existence for himself. But then they just gloss over that right away, and that only lasts for like 30 seconds. So that's a shame.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't feel that there was a ton of momentum to create him to get out of it. Like he carved out this level of existence. He doesn't even know how long he's been there, but he's like found a home within what he's doing. And then he found someone and he wants to share that moment in time with her, and she goes no. And then he finds someone else who's found acceptance within this world. And that's the thing that changes his mind to get out of it. Like it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me.
Everything that we are doing is meaningless.
I hope it's not all meaningless.
This is the sort of film that I like to see a streaming service create, because this is the kind of movie that studios have really stopped creating because there's no money in it for a theatrical release. These kind of smaller romantic comedies that aren't necessarily gigantic budget, even though it was purchased for such a huge cost. But just simple stories that you used to be able to go see in 1991 that you can't see anymore because it doesn't have Iron Man in it. So no one's going to go to the theater. So I love that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Movies need to evolve based on how people are watching and ingesting content and film. So if the old model of everything in a theater and that's it, and then we wait a year and we get it on Blu-ray, like that needs to evolve with it. How we watch films needs to evolve, and I don't think we're there. So hopefully it's not a one and done situation. It's not, okay, well now, the answer isn't, well now everything's on streaming except for Marvel. I don't think that's the answer either. There just needs to be a new inventive way of how we watch movies.
Yeah, well, there's a lot going on right now. COVID-19 is instigating a lot of changes, so we'll see.
But I just don't think the answer is universal.
Yeah,
That would be my only
no,
suggestion.
everything requires nuance and thought and gray area, but nothing in this world allows for that. So, of course, the answer will be universal, and we can only go see Disney movies at theaters from now on. So,
Correct. Yeah, and that's my biggest fear. That is my biggest fear.
yeah. Love you, Disney. Please don't ever put me on a blacklist. Okay, so this is a great segue to our second film, which is American Pickle. American Pickle, which is on HBO Max.
Als ik arbeidsjaar in school een weerreich.
Wie rijk?
Zo reich. Als ik zo opzullen mijn eigen met zijn.
Going into it, I thought, yeah, this is another of the kind of movies that these streaming studios should be making, because it seems like a smaller, more intimate story, and didn't appear to have some gigantic cast, didn't appear to have some gigantic budget. So I thought I was intrigued. I was intrigued by the trailer. I was intrigued by everything I knew. What was your experience prior to seeing the film? Anything?
We spoke the other day when you said you gotta watch this movie. I had only seen a little bit of press on it. I've seen the posters. I thought it was sort of like a it reminded me of Lighthouse, with William Dafoe. That's like so I thought it was a serious movie. When we talked about it, I thought it was a serious film, and when I saw reviews about how transcendent Seth Rogen was, and I saw some blurbs like Vanity Fair things that said like, oh, like he's outdone himself, he's done great work. This is a true, like, I feel like I read some things like singing his praise on a performance level, and that was all I had going into it. And
Okay.
you said, no, I think you're wrong.
No. We have to get to this because I'm not going to be able to contain my contemptuous faces. So, spoiler alert, I think it's like one of the worst films I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
Seth Rogen does do a fine job. So if you read praise for just him, like that I can see. But that film is just the worst. It's just the worst. And I'm not trying to be insulting to I don't like being critical.
Well, you are.
Creative
You're
people.
insulting someone. Probably many people at this point.
Probably, all of whom I'm sure will, turn me down on another film set sometime. I'm shooting
Absolutely.
myself in the foot for this YouTube video that's going to get 10 views. But no, I don't even know where to begin with what was so wrong with this movie. I'm so flummoxed by it.
Yeah, I loved it, and I love everyone in it, and I'd love to be part of any future projects. You are correct. I called you immediately after this film, and it is awful. It is arguably one of the worst films I've ever seen, like at a certain level. There are like student films, obviously, that you're just like, this is,
I've seen
like,
some
this-
really shitty short films in my work with film festivals. Yeah,
Made by me.
and movies that I've acted in that you've directed.
I've created bad films.
We
so I
make
know
bad films too, American Pickle guys. So we're all in the same boat. But
Yeah, we're
geez,
all in
did
the
you
same boat.
make a
Congratulations.
stinker.
You're equally as untalented as me. So
We'll all get there
congrats.
someday.
Rarefied air to be this shitty. But I hate to say it, it is bad. I called you immediately after because I couldn't contain myself, because the question I want to know is, how does it get made?
Well, it has Seth Rogen in it. I mean, that's a simple answer. Is like, let's say the
that it?
filmmakers had no other. Yeah, you get Seth. You're friends with Seth Rogen, or you're friends with Evan Goldberg, or whomever, and you think, well, we got this. Seth Rogen has this, or whomever wrote the short story. Simon Rich, I believe, was the man's name.
Yeah.
He had this idea for the short story. It's Tevye from Fiddler on the Roof, but in present day. Wouldn't that be funny? Let's make a movie. Seth Rogen wants to do it. He wants to look like Tevye in a movie. So let's do it, and then it gets made.
It blows my mind.
It's the word I've used, and I told you this, is lazy. It's the laziest film I think I've ever seen, maybe. In terms of writing in particular, it's the writing is so mind-bogglingly lazy that they just don't care about anything, about any of the rules. You always talk about the rules within any world of a film or within the context of the film. Like there's just none of that. If your comedy is set in the real world, there's a way to write comedy where the punchlines are still realistic. I've said to you several times, I don't like it when I'm watching a movie and I go, people don't talk like that. Nobody would say that. And I felt like that in American Pickle, it became evident early on where the way he's talking to his wife in the early scenes back in the day, it's like, okay, they're just telling jokes. They're trying to slip jokes in. It's not in any way realistic to what these people might actually say. And then obviously the big thing is when he falls into the rats come for him and he falls into the vat, and then, you know, they immediately put the lid on. No one sees him, even though it splashes everywhere. Like, okay, we're not, I was disappointed at that moment, but I thought, okay, that's the way this movie's gonna be. That's the way the movie's gonna be. That's fine. I can live with that. And I really thought it was genuinely funny the way that he glossed over the explanation, like the scientist's explanation. Yeah. The scientists speak and gives great explanation.
Great insight. Everyone goes, yeah.
I thought, okay,
cool.
that's genuinely funny. I can be on board with this non-realistic movie. But then within the context, within the rules of that world, nothing still makes sense. And that is just lazy writing. The biggest thing was that a huge plot device to the whole story has to do with like the viral nature of this guy's pickle business in the second half of the film, going on to being successful, and he's this viral superstar. I'm gonna get him on Twitter, and I'm gonna do this. But it's like this man is resurrected from brine 100 years later, and no one recognizes him on the street. Like when he's first selling pickles. Like imagine if a man was discovered in brine, still alive from 1919. You would know what that man looked like in your brain till the end of time, even if you weren't consuming media like crazy. You know, because that's the world we live in, and that's the world that they live in, is Twitter is everything, and he's a web developer, and we're gonna get him to go viral, so he's canceled. And it tries to have all this little commentary on today's online world, but we're just supposed to believe that like no one recognizes the fucking pickle guy a week after he comes out and he's selling pickles on the street. Like, that's just so lazy, I want to hurt myself. Like, I hate it. I hate it. I'm sorry, that was long.
No, it's. I think lazy is the right word. Or there's no care. There's no thought. There's no second level of thought. To me, the biggest issue of second level of thought is what the resolution becomes. Because the first thing I thought when they break up, when they get in their fight, is like, you ruined my dreams, and because of the fight that we got in, and now, like, I don't want you part of my life anymore. You ruined my dreams. And then the guy goes out and he starts to accomplish his goal. He becomes a pickle mogul overnight, which is just super simple to say. Like, oh, people all of a sudden love you. My first thought was, oh, well, why doesn't he just go back and just talk to him and like work with him? It's the first thought I had. The end of the movie, what the culmination of like how this is all fixed is like, we're gonna do it and we're gonna do it together. Roll credits.
Yeah.
Is the first thought I had. It's not that difficult of a conclusion to come to. Any rule of screenwriting, rule number one, it's like back your protagonist into a corner they can't get out of. And if it literally takes me 1 second to come up with a plausible solution to your issue, you can't do it.
Yeah.
You can't do it. It is extremely logical for him to be like, oh shit, my business isn't working. I should go back and talk to that guy and see if we could work together. He didn't burn a bridge in a way that is unsalvageable. It's not like he stole his idea or he like hurt him specifically. It was collateral damage. It's a misunderstanding. It's something that like happened to them, not because of him. And you can't just like, oh, hey, I'm sorry about that. It was crazy last month that we fought about that. Like, but I see you're doing great. You had me. I can help you. Here's how.
Yeah.
We're family. Like it takes, the movie should be over in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah. Well,
that's extremely lazy to not outthink that problem that literally I bet 90% of the viewers probably thought of when they watched the movie. That's lazy.
Much like Palm Springs, the concept here has a ton of potential. It has a ton of comedic potential. We're all willing to move past the absurdity of it. Like, you know, like that's fine. I feel like I'm gonna defend from their perspective. Like, we establish early on that this isn't realistic,
Yeah.
that it's totally over the top, it's just here to make you laugh. And that's fair and fine.
That is fine.
But there still has to be some semblance of cohesion. Whether the rules that apply to your world in the film are the rules that apply to our real world is irrelevant. But there has to be some structure.
Correct.
Or else you just get to tell whatever, every scene is its own new world of rules.
Yeah.
And nothing makes sense. You know, I just, that stresses me out. And I just feel like someone had this idea for a short story, if we understand correctly. They wrote the story, and then they were like, okay, how do we stretch it out into a feature film? What are some other funny bits? Well, what if we had a scene where this happened? And what if we had a scene where this happened? It just makes no sense.
They tried to like mix this real world with this ridiculous thing, and none of it adds up to what happens. Nothing justifies the next scene that happens. The next action that happens is not justified by the whatever conflict arose before it. You know, it's not a natural sort of, it's just things that are happening. And you're like, oh, okay, this is happening now.
It's so frustrating, again, because like the concept, once you get past the stupidity of it, is funny, and there's so much potential. And I mentioned to you on the phone, was like, even that the throwaway scene of them watching Barbra Streisand in the closing credits, it's like, okay, that's actually funny. Like, I would watch an hour and a half of modern day Seth Rogen introducing old Seth Rogen to the world. And I think it was such a strange choice to be like, oh, Seltzer, what a luxury Seltzer would be. Oh, no, 5 minutes in, he gets Seltzer. And then it's not really talked about anymore.
Yeah, there's no,
like,
but that was his
building
lifelong
this
goal.
up. Yeah, and it's like, and I honestly thought as they were doing that, I thought, wow, this is going to be this really thoughtful commentary on how people in today's day and age take everything for granted. Like, there's, you know, like someone back then, your great-great-grandfather, his whole life goal might have been to just have Seltzer, and what magic that would be. And I honestly, like, I started to like go down my imagination as I was watching, to give this film way too much credit, to be like, yeah, there's going to be this really great payoff where he finally gets to have Seltzer, and it's gonna let young Seth Rogen know, and the young, you know, millennial Gen Z audience, that you take all this stuff for granted. You have all this magic at your fingertips. What a powerful little message that is. But no, that's like, here, let me give you some NYC tap water, room temp Seltzer. Great.
Yeah, first 2 minutes.
On to the next thing.
There's no goal. There's no goal for either one of the characters. Like, there's like an outline of something, but old Seth Rogen wants to. His whole dream is to have a strong family and drink seltzer. And he does that, and then he wants to, and then all of a sudden midway through he's like, well, now I'm going to be a pickle guy. You introduced his goal 30 minutes into a new goal, 30 minutes into the film, and then he accomplishes that goal by minute 40. Like, in the next 10 minutes, he's like, well, now I'm a pickle mogul. So what like, and then he accomplishes the other goal. He made $200,000 in a week, and then like,
This family man, this guy whose whole life is predicated on family and the legacy of my family, all of a sudden becomes like the most spiteful, angry person in the world. Well, I'm gonna dedicate my life to destroying you, Ben Greenbaum.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck?
It's unmotivated.
Like, what are you doing?
It's just, it's we want to make them fight. Okay, now they're gonna fight. The actions in this film just happen because, like, we need them to happen. And it's not within a character, it's not within a world that makes sense to the world that they're in. It's just like, okay, well, now at this point in the movie, this needs to happen, so it's gonna happen.
And the most, I never use the word offensive, because things don't offend me. But I was fucking, like, the most offensive thing about it was then this film has the audacity to try to, like, switch gears on a dime to give some emotional impact while he's, like, praying in this foreign country around the funeral, and oh, I lost my parents too, and they really hold on his sad face, like they're really trying to wring some emotion out of you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who gives a shit? I honestly was like, how dare this movie try now to act like a real emotional, like, that there's anything real or emotional
No.
happening here.
Well, that's the
is
only
just
reason
so
they have his parents
stupid.
die. It's the only reason they have his parents die is so he can act like a jerk 80% of the film and spiteful and try and sabotage this guy for no real reason. And like at the end, you're like, oh, but cut him a break because his parents died, and that's really sad, and that's unfortunate.
And Bebop was his parents. Oh,
Yeah, that was it's just like we have like 6 things that we know are gonna happen in the film. We'll just write around it. We're just gonna do the first thing that pops in your mind. What did you say? Oh, they get into a fight? Great, write it down.
Yeah.
There's no thought. There's no second level of thought. I can't find it. I can't find. Like they didn't meet a bad idea. It was just like first draft. Here we go. We're making it.
Yeah. It's great. It's a great point. It's just the first draft.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. It seems like a funny outline, a funny idea, funny concept. We got a good star.
We'll work the rest out.
We'll just work it out. We'll just like this is good. We'll shoot it. Low budget. Like we could just make it happen.
In closing, say one good thing about it.
You go first.
No.
The end.
No. I think Seth Rogen's performance is mostly fine. Like I like Seth Rogen. I've liked the movies he's done with Evan Goldberg. You know, I like 50-50. 50-50 is a great example of a funny movie that's very touching, that lives in a real world, that switches back and forth between emotion and kind of stupid comedy once in a while. Like that's a perfect counterbalance
It's a good film.
to this steaming pile of shit.
Yeah.
So my compliment about this is 50-50 was good.
I laughed. I think the only time I laughed was the courtroom scene. That felt like a sketch. It felt like a funny sketch. Like I didn't need any of the context of the film to get that joke when they're just debating over a beard versus not a beard. And I was like, oh, that's funny. That's a funny bit. Like I get it. That made me laugh. That's it.
I would say check out Palm Springs. You probably already have. It's a popular film.
Yeah.
It's on Hulu. It's totally fine entertainment.
Yeah, that's an enjoyable film. Do not watch American Pickle.
Honestly,
There's no reason.
It's not even so bad. It's good. It's a time suck.
Yeah.
There's not enough humor to balance out all the bullshit. Because even if a movie sucks, I'd be like, yeah, well, there's 5 or 6 parts that I really laughed.
They're just really funny.
And that's kind of worth seeing. There's a couple movies like that where it's like, movie sucks, but there's some funny parts. There's nothing really. There's nothing funny.
And it's 88
sucks.
minutes.
Don't-
It's under 90 minutes. Still feels long because it's mindless. It meanders. It wanders. It just happens. It happens to you. With that said, I'd love to work with everyone who worked on that film in a future project.
Nothing but love and respect for the entire cast and crew of An American Pickle.
2 random guys sharing opinions that no one asked for. It's just brutal. I can't do this.